All right, we're going to get started. Thanks for bearing with us. We're going to talk about AR and imagination today, but not imagination as we normally think about it, because there's a practical way of thinking about this. Because after all, this session is about getting real, finding ways to integrate AR into your business. So that's what we're going to cover today. But first, a little background on us, give you some context. Joel Krieger, I work at Magic Leap. A big part of my work, I would say, for the last, like 2.5, 3 years, has been developing first-party in-house apps on the Magic Leap 2. Things like pilots and prototypes that help us explore potential futures, like this wildfire application, which is helping us imagine, could something like this be useful for wildland firefighters when it comes to visualization and simulation and training, and even, perhaps live incident response. Magic Leap Assist, which kind of covers some well-trodden ground in the remote assistance space, but here we're really kind of exploring, hey, could we do this in a different way? Is there a new way to think about this here? And then Magic Leap Workshop, which is really a multi-user collaboration and prototyping tool, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later. And then Marty?
Thanks. My name is Marti Romances. I'm the co-founder and creative director at Territory Studio. And basically, Territory Studio is a service, content creation, and technology company, basically, that started in London 14 years ago, and now we have 5 offices: San Francisco, Los Angeles, Vancouver, Barcelona. We have over 220 people, and we sit within this trifecta, which basically helps us define who we became after these 14 years. And it's basically through design as an international language. We tell stories, and of course we use technology, but we also sometimes are inventing technology and creating inventions with new technologies that exist. And that's because we started the company focused on creating content for these films, and the world of films and games allowed us to dream a lot about what's possible. And we work in all of these different science fictions and fictional spaces, but we sit in between the playground, the Hollywood, and then the Silicon Valley, which is real brands, real products, real digital product that need to be functional. And sitting in between allowed us to be a very special breed, a new breed as a creative company. That, as you will imagine, each film, each game needs to be very different and comes with different directors having different stories that they want to tell, and that allowed us to constantly flex our creative muscle to find these different technologies that we ended up applying as well in real products, from cars to wearables and whatnot. And we're going to be exploring a little bit about that today.
Great. All right, so we're a little behind on time, but the format, we're going to try something a little bit different today, hopefully. We have 3 provocations to share that help us think about this topic, practical imagination, in a bit of a different way. This first one, I want to start with the word friction. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you're a business, part of your job in terms of staying relevant and it is being on top of new technologies, exploring them, and finding a way to integrate them into your business. Where do they fit? And inevitably, you're going to meet organizational resistance to this. Like, this is how we've always done things. Or, how do you build stakeholder consensus around what the shared vision for the future is? Or, how do you build a business case that we should even be playing with this in the first place? So there's friction. And you think about fiction, when I think of that word, I think of getting lost in a really good story. And that story could be a book or a movie, it doesn't matter. And so you think a lot about, okay, that's Hollywood, that's the stuff of imagination. But fiction can be used to remove friction in your business when it comes to adopting AR. There's a practice around this. Some people call it speculative design or design fiction. And it's really this idea that you can imagine plausible futures by designing a real artifact that would come from that world. And there's something about that process of making something real that helps you imagine a potential future in a bit of a different way. And what I thought was so interesting about Marti and Territory is that, they kind of do both, right? They They build things for truly fictional stories, but they also build it for real.
Yeah, and what we see here is exactly that, like where we are in between these two worlds, like imagining things in films, but also creating real prototypes and actual digital product for, in this case, a lot of automotive clients and transportation in general. You can start seeing like the link between imagining what could be possible and then applying some of these or the degree of what's possible today into these real products, and just bouncing between both is really what makes us special. But the influence that comes from these films allows us to think a little bit beyond what everyone thinks is possible now, and that allows us to be a bit more disruptive with our clients and embrace these new mediums. And it's thanks to the technology, like the true AR technology that Magically offers, that we are able to prototype. And of course, in the films, we have to do all of this with visual effects and things that are pre-rendered, while we are working with software and hardware developers that are allowing us to put our ideas together and really develop those prototypes and real final products for real. So this is only one example, right? Like we're looking at how we go from a spaceship to a car, but there are other examples, and there are other examples like Ghost in the Shell, for example, where we were able to imagine the future of outdoor, out-of-home advertising, or even just sometimes it comes from a game inspiration or a film inspiration that we end up prototyping things that now are going to be real thanks to new technologies, new products, even urbanism and mobility, how we can have a crossing for pedestrians on demand. Like we are able to do this with visual effects, but we know that in the future, once we have augmented reality hugely adoption and more mainstream for everyone to experience, we're going to be able to prototype for these real products. And of course, the world of Marvel allowed us to explore things that should not be something that humans understand. There's a great anecdote when we were talking with James Gunn and the first Guardians of the Galaxy, and we started showing some prototypes and some designs, and he wanted something that really, as humans, we could not understand. So we created a lot of abstract visualizations, and for one of these concepts, later on in one of these automotive companies that we work with, thanks to the EV and different levels of autonomy, we end up reusing a very abstract visualization that was making zero sense, but originally in that film, because it was coming from another galaxy, we end up using it to visualize and represent the electric vehicle range and battery range, and really helps. And it's these happy accidents that happen because we are like forced to imagine things that maybe are nothing that we've seen in this world, that we end up translating into a real world UX paradigm and with a real function behind. And I think that these are the great examples, especially with Star Wars and the world of Marvel, that pushes us to think really, really outside of the box. Our field of view then is wide open, and that's kind of where we find like the huge value of being in between these different industries.
So we were going to try to have a bit of a conversation here, but I may have to skip through some of this based on time. But I do want to note on something. What Marti just shared was kind of indicative of two types of cross-pollination. One is, exploring fictional vehicle UI, futuristic vehicle UI, in all sorts of different movies. And then if you didn't clock that from the video there's a lot of real work for automotive brands, like probably more automotive brands than I could count. So there's that cross-pollination. And there's the other cross-pollination is represented by that Ghost in the Shell frame, where you see they're imagining different types of future technologies across categories. So it's not just AR and auto, it's out-of-home advertising, as you saw in Ghost in the Shell. So Marti, I wonder what you think about, you occupy a really interesting space with one foot in each of these worlds. So what becomes possible because of that?
Well, I think it's like the happy accidents and thinking outside of the box. When we know a lot of companies that they do UI for cars, but that's what they've been doing for 20 years. They just see in one way. They just really close, and they have a very narrow vision. And in the same sense, like you get people that work in game UI, or maybe even just people that they only do visual effects for films and they don't have like a very near close relationship with the new technologies and startups like that Silicon Valley kind of new inventions that might also inform how we will represent graphics and technology in a film that aims to be here happening in Earth in 10 years. So it kind of goes both ways. And I think that's the beauty around like just diversifying your offering is not only from the business perspective for us has hedged ourselves against market volatility in the film industry, games industry and whatnot, but also opens up your field of view. And I think it's all about having a perspective that maybe others don't have and being able to disrupt and come up with more innovative ideas.
Yeah. All right, second provocation. Think about the last time you were asked for your business to think about any aspect of the future for it. So that could be AR, could be AI. It could not be either of those things, but some other future impacting thing. And just like picture those moments in your mind and think about what you were actually doing and how much of your time was spent in a meeting room like this, sitting around talking with others about what it could be or what we could do. I think it's kind of amazing how much time we spend speculating about the future with our words. So like, there are other ways to speculate. You know, we could speculate about the future by making a thing. So less talk, more do. One of the ways, I would say a great example from the auto industry is the idea of a concept car. Okay, this is a tried and true artifact that the whole industry uses. And it is design fiction in a way when you think about it, because they're making a thing that's not intended to be possible for another 5-10 years. And this thing serves as like a North Star or a beacon for the rest of the company, because now they have a shared vision. They all kind of have a concrete feel for what it needs to be. And that's a tremendous vehicle to, no pun intended, to move things forward.
Yeah, and the best example that we can find out of many examples that we work with concept cars is the Audi Active Sphere.
You would just tap through?
Sure.
Yeah.
So basically, Audi came up with this concept car that was very revolutionary in a way that they wanted to eliminate the screens inside of the cabin. And with electric cars also, you started to lose a bit of that heart of the vehicle, the engine that has vibrations, the sound. So all of a sudden, the human-machine interface and that UI and that experience is the only thing that really connects you to that car. And we, as Joel said, we could just talk a lot about in meetings, but really the best way for us to think about what the best experience that someone could have in a car that now drives by itself, that offers you the steering wheel when you need it only, or that has other functionalities, the best way for us was to prototype with it. And so you will see in a minute that we were with them, and while they were building the interior of the car, and the user interface was also informing how the interior could be shaped. All of a sudden, when you don't have those screens, you don't have these computers on the cockpit, like you don't need to cover all of that. You can open all of that real estate, and that could become then the Canva where you can create, and even how to mount these bikes on the back of the car. You could just create a tutorial that we did like in Augmented Reality to tell you exactly where and how this will work. And we only get to these things by just trying them, putting a headset on, sitting on a bug, working with them, and then working with us, of course, on what are the opportunities where we could place certain things. Audi did not even know how their logo will look when it's not flat at the bottom of the car or on the steering wheel, but is instead floating in front of you. And so all of these little things are just learnings that you keep finding just by doing. We had, of course, like all of these maps created in real time, with the map sensor data and the route that in order to present it to the driver and passenger, that all of a sudden are becoming passive passengers because the car is driving by itself. All of this is allowing them to interact with it, and both of them being able to see the same information. And what we're talking about here is the use case that can come from many different angles. If you're driving off-road and you want to see what's inside, like in front of your car. We can actually augment that. We can make the front of the car almost invisible. We can have a user interface that reacts to your movements. And we also kind of start finding things like, as you can see in the top right, in order to change the temperature of your car, we started to realize that putting too many frontal controls was not really allowing the cameras from the headset to understand the rotation of your fingers, but instead having things at a slight angle was giving us a very accurate read of our fingers at a perspective that helped us. So it's these little things that we found out, and again, we only, well, not only inside of the car, but also outside of the car, being able to augment what's happening, what you see from your windshield, or what's happening once you're out of the car, creating a holistic experience. And we only kind of find out about certain things that work or not by just doing them, rapid prototyping them, as you will see here with the headsets, with the whole team really understanding where we were positioning certain things. Even just understanding that certain controls, if you have to start getting your elbow out of your rib cage, become very uncomfortable for the driver or the passenger. And this is what we're talking about here, right? Like the art of doing rather than talking about it allowed us to move faster and just to create a better user experience for us at Territory, and I'm sure Magic Leap as well. Is of paramount importance that we expand and augment the human experience, and we're doing it by just imagining how we interact with machines in a very, very different way. And we believe that this is clearly like something that not only the automotive field could explore and continue to exploring with these concept cars that will eventually be in everyone's hands and roads, but also with other industries as well that have the opportunity to have this type of provocations.
And everything you're seeing in that video is real except the mountain biking outdoor scenes, right? That you actually made all this.
Yes, this is a prototype that works with Magic Leap, the tracks inside of the car and outside of the car, and it moved with the concept car around the world for people to understand and interact with it. So it's not only like a fancy video with visual effects, but actually it's something that works.
Yeah. All right. This last thought we'd like to leave you with is this idea of dreaming out loud. When you think about dreaming, you think about, well, this is something that is a highly personal thing. This is something you do by yourself, and it's very ethereal. But you can actually dream collectively, and you can do so in a way that's visible and concrete, that you can touch it together. And we just saw one example of this. And of course, the business value here is that you can bring stakeholders together. You can actually make progress against this imagined future. So that's one way of doing it. What are some others? Well, I'll share one that we lived through. As I mentioned, we've been making these applications for Magic Leap 2, and it's important to note they're not intended to be solutions. They're intended to be broad, evergreen things that we want them to be as useful as possible in as many industries as possible, and then within each of those industries, as many use cases within that industry as possible. So how do you do this? Well, you might start by breaking it down into like a core evergreen experience structure. And so one of those might be situations where you have one Magic Leap 2 and you want to work with somebody remotely who's on a laptop. You might have situations where your whole team has Magic Leap 2s, and they may be together in the same room or remote or some combination therein, and what does that look like? And then you have situations where it's really all about a Magic Leap 2 user and their environment. What can we know about it, and how can we augment their experience in that way? So for this example, we took the middle one, and we made Magic Leap Workshop, which wasn't really intended to be a design-focused application. This was really about multi-user collaboration and prototyping. But when we had an alpha, and we started distributing it through the company and internally, and we had all different groups of all different types of people playing with this application, trying to figure out, like, how could this be useful to me? And we made just enough of a thing for it to be usable in someone's daily work. And what we found was that the folks that had some sort of 3D aspect to their daily workflow were really flocking to this. I mean, they were adopting it. They were finding it useful. So we doubled down and we dialed it in on that use case. And then we found an awesome partner. This is Hush. They make these amazing interactive architectural installations. And we did a pilot with them. We helped them get up to speed using it. And they used it for all different sorts of things. They used it for brainstorming, kind of like a 3D virtual whiteboard, a lot of prototyping. Here they're playing with different shapes and iterating on forms for what would be a much larger installation. Looking at media, the moving image at scale feels very different. So how's that look? A lot of dollhouse view work where you're doing the same type of thing that you would if you had a physical architectural model, which of course takes time to build and then takes time to change. And here you're kind of doing the same thing. And the big difference is that, of course, that you're still situated in your place. You're still working with other people. The most interesting thing we did was we rented a warehouse and walked our clients through a design presentation, an immersive at-scale design presentation. These are designs that they have been looking at on two-dimensional screens for months. And this is their first time, and we actually captured it. This is real and live. Captured them experiencing these ideas and walking through them. And what we realized out of all the things that they did, this particular moment was the biggest moment of value. It was the biggest, strongest signal. And the funny thing was, if we had just guessed at the beginning, like where should we go with this? I think we would have been wrong. But it was this process of dreaming out loud, at first openly with folks in our company, and then secondarily dreaming out loud with others to kind of help this dream become something that's not so ethereal and tangible and untangible, and it's something that you can actually touch. And so a lot of our design iterations past this point have been all about taking what we saw, these sparks where people got really excited and they could see how this would change their business, doubling down on that. If anyone's interested, by the way, to try out, to dip your toe in the water, both these applications are free. You can download them and use them in this manner as a prototype to explore different AR use cases for your business. And man, we ended right on time.
Yeah, we're super tight. I mean, I think like the diversification and applying this to different industries. When we were talking today, you were saying like Audi, you will have imagined that they use it in that sense for like the human experience. And
yes.
So anyway, there's plenty more that we could be discussing here for hours, but we ran out of time. Well, thanks everyone. And for sure, get downstairs to the booth. Magic Leap has lots of great demos, and we're open to any questions. I mean, you can catch us up here, but you can find us on LinkedIn, both Joel and I. We're always open to discuss with the industry leaders and people that are interested in this space. It's definitely just the beginning, and we could not be more excited about it. So, yeah, thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks for joining. Yeah, thanks for coming out.